They arrived in America ready to laugh. They had seen the videos. Burgers stacked so high that eating one looked less like dinner and more like a construction project. Milkshakes covered in whipped cream, cookies, candy, syrup, and sometimes an entire slice of cake balanced on top. Breakfast plates large enough to feed a family. Drinks served in cups that appeared to require their own cup holders, passports, and emergency evacuation plans. To many European World Cup fans, American food represented everything they believed was wrong with the United States. Too large, too loud, too sweet, too greasy, too artificial, too much of everything. They joked that Americans did not eat meals. They accepted challenges. They said American restaurants had confused portion size with quality. They mocked the endless ice, the free refills, the sauces, the drive-through windows, and the strange habit of serving enough food for tomorrow, alongside whatever you had ordered for today. Then they landed in the United States, and something unexpected began happening. The same fans who had laughed at American portions started photographing them. The same visitors who complained about free refills began asking whether the rule applied to every drink. The same Europeans who dismissed ranch dressing as white sauce with an identity crisis started searching for bottles they could carry home. They entered restaurants as critics. They left with leftovers. They planned to try one American chain for entertainment. Then they built entire road trips around the next one. And before the tournament was over, food had accomplished something politicians, advertising campaigns, and tourism boards had struggled to achieve. It made strangers curious about America. Not the America of elections, not the America of headlines, the America of barbecue smoke, diner counters, grocery store sandwiches, regional sauces, late-night breakfasts, and strangers asking whether you wanted more. The Europeans had come to watch football. Instead, they discovered that another competition was taking place away from the pitch. America versus their appetite. And their appetite was losing. Before the World Cup, many international visitors believed they understood American cuisine. They knew the famous images: hamburgers, hot dogs, French fries, pizza, fried chicken, soft drinks, everything large, fast, and wrapped in paper. Hollywood had exported those images for decades. American chains already existed across Europe. A visitor from London, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, or Madrid could order an American-style burger without crossing the Atlantic. So what could possibly surprise them? Almost everything. Because the version of American food exported overseas is only a simplified preview. The real experience begins with scale. A European visitor orders a sandwich and expects a sandwich. In America, the plate arrives carrying the sandwich, a mountain of fries, pickles, sauces, and sometimes another side dish that nobody remembers requesting. The visitor looks around for the person who ordered the family meal. The server points at him. That entire plate is yours. At first, the reaction is disbelief, then laughter, then photography. Then the dangerous sentence, "I'll just try a little." A little becomes half. Half becomes almost all of it. And 20 minutes later, the same person who called the portion ridiculous is asking whether the restaurant sells the sauce separately. International fans posted thousands of videos documenting first encounters with Texas barbecue, regional sandwiches, late-night Waffle House meals, fast food chains, and the American custom of refilling soft drinks without charging for every additional glass. Those everyday food experiences became one of the tournament's most visible social media stories. The free refill was often the first cultural shock. In many parts of Europe, ordering another soda means buying another soda. The glass is finished. The transaction is finished. In America, the drink disappears and another one arrives. Sometimes the customer does not even ask. A server notices the empty glass and replaces it, as if allowing a person to experience thirst would violate the Constitution. European visitors watched this process with suspicion. Was the second drink included? Was there a hidden charge? Would the bill arrive with a separate line for every refill? Could they refill it again? How many times? The American answer appeared almost irresponsible. As many times as you want. This sounded less like restaurant policy and more like a test of character. A European fan who normally drinks one small soda suddenly feels personally challenged. If the refills are free, stopping after one feels financially incorrect. So another glass arrives. Then another. By the third refill, the visitor is no longer thirsty. He is defending a principle. The free refill looks trivial, but it reveals something larger about American consumer culture. Abundance is not supposed to remain hidden. It is displayed. The cup should be full. The plate should be full. The grocery shelf should be full. The customer should not leave wondering whether the restaurant could have provided more. American hospitality often communicates generosity through quantity. Eat. Drink. Take the rest with you. Do not leave hungry. That final instruction appears simple, but it carries deep cultural meaning. Many American food traditions emerged from communities where feeding people generously was a sign of care. Southern hospitality, immigrant family tables, church gatherings, neighborhood cookouts, Thanksgiving dinners, barbecues, family reunions, tailgates. In those settings, an empty plate can feel like failure. The host does not ask whether there was technically enough. The host asks whether everyone was overwhelmed by enough. European critics saw excess. American hosts often saw reassurance. The visitor was safe. The visitor was welcome. The visitor would not go hungry. But free refills were only the opening round. Then came breakfast. European breakfasts vary enormously, but many visitors were accustomed to something relatively controlled. Coffee, bread, fruit, cereal, perhaps eggs, meat, or a larger cooked breakfast, depending on the country and occasion. America looked at the concept of breakfast and asked a more ambitious question. What if every breakfast food arrived at the same time? Eggs, bacon, sausage, hash browns, toast, pancakes, butter, syrup, biscuits, gravy, coffee, orange juice, and, for reasons nobody explains, another side dish. The European fan sits down expecting fuel for the morning. The American diner presents enough fuel to continue operating until Wednesday. Late-night visits to Waffle House became especially popular with first-time visitors because the experience felt unlike a formal European restaurant and unlike the polished America shown in advertisements. A simple meal came with open kitchens, conversations with staff, regional accents, regular customers, and the unpredictable energy of a restaurant that remains active when most of the city is asleep. Waffle House confused some fans before they even entered. Was it primarily a waffle restaurant? A breakfast restaurant? A diner? A social experiment? The answer was yes. At 1 in the morning, a European supporter could sit beside truck drivers, students, night shift workers, families, exhausted travelers, and fans wearing 4 different national jerseys. The menu seemed familiar. The atmosphere was not. Nothing felt carefully designed for international tourists. There was no attempt to present an idealized national image. It was ordinary America, operating at an unusual hour. The grill was visible. The conversations were direct. The coffee kept coming. The hash browns could be ordered through a language that sounded almost like tactical instructions. Scattered, smothered, covered, chunked. The foreign visitor who had mocked American culinary culture now needed a translation guide to order potatoes. That was the beginning of a more important realization. American food culture was not one cuisine. It was thousands of local systems hidden beneath a few famous global brands. The stereotype said, America ate hamburgers. The journey revealed Texas brisket, Kansas City ribs, Carolina pulled pork, Louisiana gumbo, New England lobster rolls, Southern biscuits, New York deli sandwiches, Chicago-style hot dogs, Nashville hot chicken, California tacos, Cuban food in Miami, immigrant bakeries, regional seafood, local desserts, and sauces defended with the seriousness of national borders. The country was not missing food culture. Its food culture was too large to summarize. European fans expected uniformity. They found arguments. People in Texas argued about barbecue. People in Kansas City argued with Texas about barbecue. People in the Carolinas argued about sauce. People in New York argued about pizza. People in Chicago explained that New York was wrong. People from Philadelphia entered the conversation carrying cheesesteaks. Americans could agree on almost nothing except the certainty that their regional version was superior. That was familiar. European food identity also lives through local pride. A French region protects its cheese. An Italian city defends its pasta. A German town takes its sausage seriously. A British county insists that another county prepares the same food incorrectly. Suddenly, American arguments stopped looking culturally empty. They looked recognizably human. The ingredients were different. The pride was the same. Barbecue became one of the clearest examples. Some visitors assumed barbecue meant placing sausages and burgers over a flame for an afternoon gathering. American barbecue often meant something much slower. Meat prepared for hours. Wood smoke. Regional techniques. Family recipes. Sauces with local loyalties. Restaurants where people waited in lines before opening. The plate arrived carrying brisket, ribs, pulled pork, bread, pickles, beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, and enough evidence to destroy the idea that the meal had been designed quickly. World Cup visitors made barbecue a priority, and restaurants in host regions prepared for increased demand as international fans sought famous local foods alongside matches. One British supporter described the cuisine as excessive and greasy while simultaneously admitting that he found it glorious. That contradiction captured the entire experience. Ridiculous, but glorious. Too much, but strangely difficult to stop eating. The European fans had prepared to judge the calories. They had not prepared for the craft. A piece of brisket that had been smoked through the night did not fit the stereotype of careless fast food. A regional sauce connected to generations of family cooking could not be dismissed as a product invented by a marketing department. The food was heavy. It was not always healthy, but it carried memory. And memory is one of the foundations of culture. Then came ranch. No one expected ranch dressing to become one of the unofficial celebrities of the World Cup. To Americans, ranch was ordinary. It existed in refrigerators, restaurants, school cafeterias, sports bars, grocery stores, and beside foods that technically did not require it. To many visitors, it was unfamiliar or treated as a joke. Why did Americans put it on vegetables? Why did they put it on wings? Why did it arrive beside pizza? Why was everyone speaking about it with emotional loyalty? Then the visitors tried it. The response became so visible online that companies and even airport authorities joined the joke. As international fans attempted to take ranch home, travel-size packaging became part of the public conversation, and Kraft promoted a carry-on-friendly concept after the condiment's popularity surged among World Cup visitors. This was culinary diplomacy in its strangest form. No formal summit, no government agreement, just a European supporter standing in an airport wondering whether a bottle of dressing exceeded the liquid limit. Ranch had achieved what international negotiations rarely do. It produced urgency. The fans did not merely like the taste, they liked the freedom of sauce. American restaurants often placed multiple sauces on the table or offered them without turning each one into a separate luxury purchase. Barbecue sauce, hot sauce, honey mustard, buffalo sauce, ranch, ketchup, regional sauces with secret recipes. The meal was not fixed. The customer could modify it. Dip it, mix it, cover it. American dining often allowed people to build a personal version of what arrived. To some Europeans, that freedom looked chaotic. To others, it became addictive. There was always another combination, another regional variation, another food that supposedly tasted better when dipped into something nobody would have considered using at home. The visitors had mocked Americans for destroying food with sauce. Then they began requesting extra containers. But America's food story was not limited to restaurants. The supermarket created a separate level of confusion. European visitors entered expecting groceries. They found a landscape, aisles stretching into the distance, entire sections devoted to cereal, dozens of milk varieties, frozen meals representing multiple cuisines, fruit, prepared in different forms, bakery counters, deli counters, pharmacies, clothing, electronics, garden equipment, seasonal decorations, and carts large enough to transport a small family. Across social media, visitors reacted to enormous supermarkets, self-service drink and ice machines, large vehicles, and the scale of ordinary American retail. Researchers quoted by ABC noted that tourists often become fascinated, not only by famous landmarks, but by daily life. This explains why a grocery store could become as memorable as a monument. A landmark shows what a country has chosen to display. A supermarket shows how people actually live. The European visitor looked at the cereal aisle and saw excess. Then he looked longer. The same aisle also represented choice. Gluten-free options, low-sugar options, high-protein options, children's brands, organic products, cheap products, premium products, family packages, individual packages. The amount could be absurd, but it also allowed millions of different households to find something that fit their habits. The visitor might criticize the artificial colors while taking photographs of every box. He might laugh at the giant package while calculating whether it would fit inside his luggage. American retail turned shopping into entertainment. That was not always admirable. Choice can become waste. Packaging can become environmental damage. Abundance can hide inequality. A full supermarket shelf does not mean every American family can afford everything on it. But the experience still challenged a simple stereotype. The country was not only consuming without thought, it had built systems around convenience. A family could buy groceries late at night. A traveler could find food after a match. A worker finishing an unusual shift could still eat. A fan could enter a store for water and leave with dinner, medicine, clothing, a phone charger, and an unexplained seasonal decoration. The convenience felt excessive until a visitor needed it. That pattern repeated throughout the tournament. They mocked the 24-hour store. Then they returned from a late match and discovered everything else was closed. They mocked drive-through restaurants. Then they spent hours traveling between cities. They mocked takeaway containers. Then they realized one American meal could become tomorrow's lunch. They mocked giant drinks. Then they sat through summer heat. Convenience rarely looks noble. It becomes valuable at the moment it solves a problem. That was when some European fans began realizing that the giant portion was not always intended to be consumed in one sitting. The leftover box changed the calculation. In many American restaurants, asking to take unfinished food home is normal. The portion arrives large, but part of the cultural assumption is that the customer may eat the rest later. The European visitor who initially saw waste now saw two meals. Dinner tonight, lunch tomorrow. The oversized plate became less ridiculous when its value extended beyond the table. Of course, not every portion was economical. Not every restaurant was affordable. World Cup visitors also faced high prices, particularly in and around some venues. The tournament itself was criticized for expensive tickets and commercial pressure. Food could be part of that frustration. A visitor paying an inflated price for a basic stadium meal was unlikely to leave praising American abundance. The contrast between ordinary food value and event pricing became impossible to miss. Atlanta offered a notable exception. Its stadium maintained fan-friendly concessions, including inexpensive hot dogs and refillable soda, while officials described the policy as part of a wider commitment to Southern hospitality. That example mattered because it showed that giant portions and low prices were not the only possible American model. The better principle was value. A fan should not feel trapped simply because he had entered a stadium. The venue could make money without treating every visitor like a temporary source of maximum profit. That philosophy surprised international supporters. because it contradicted two expectations at once. They expected American sports to be highly commercial. They expected World Cup food to be expensive. A low-cost hot dog inside a modern stadium did not erase the tournament's pricing controversies, but it showed that different choices were possible. The food story was becoming a story about systems. What does a society believe the customer deserves? Choice? Speed? Quantity? Customization? Affordability? Convenience? A refill? A place to eat at 2 in the morning? No country answers those questions perfectly. Europe often protects quality, tradition, seasonality, and slower dining experiences. America often emphasizes access, speed, variety, and personal preference. The strongest cultures can learn from both. European visitors did not need to abandon smaller portions or long meals. Americans did not need to pretend every giant plate was wise. The interesting question was not which continent had defeated the other. It was what each side had failed to notice. European criticism often focused on what American food lacked: restraint, simplicity, traditional rules. Americans could respond by asking what European dining sometimes lacked: free water, late-night options, easy customization, refills, large takeaway portions, consistent service, convenience during travel. Neither list tells the entire truth. But the World Cup placed millions of people inside the comparison. The debate stopped being theoretical. A French supporter could taste Texas barbecue. A German visitor could eat Southern fried chicken. A British fan could discover that American biscuits were not biscuits. An Italian supporter could become deeply offended by one pizza and surprisingly impressed by another. Visitors could compare not the idea of American food, but the food itself. And first-hand experience created nuance. Some meals were terrible. Some were unforgettable. Some were too large. Some were expensive. Some chains felt exactly as artificial as expected. Some local restaurants destroyed the stereotype in a single bite. The transformation became credible because it was not universal praise. The fans did not return home declaring that every American meal was superior. They returned with specific obsessions: a sauce, a restaurant, a regional dish, a breakfast tradition, a refill policy, a barbecue style, a grocery store sandwich. One chain they had mocked and visited 3 times. That is how genuine cultural influence works. It is rarely total conversion. It is selective attachment. You keep your identity. You steal the best idea. The title of the story was not that Europe had no food. Europe contained some of the world's deepest culinary traditions. The revelation was that America contained experiences Europe could borrow without losing what made European food special. Imagine smaller portions remaining available, but leftovers becoming easier and less awkward. Imagine more free water, more late-night food options near major events, more flexibility for customers, more public gathering spaces built around affordable meals, more regional food promoted alongside international tourism, more hospitality measured not only by elegance, but by whether the guest felt comfortable asking for what he needed. America did not have to replace Europe. It could challenge Europe. And Europe could challenge America in return. Because beneath the viral videos was a serious problem. American food abundance has consequences. Large portions can encourage overeating. Highly processed foods can be cheap and convenient while creating long-term health costs. Excess sugar, salt, and fat are not harmless simply because visitors enjoy them during a holiday. Food waste remains a major concern. A meal large enough for 2 does not create value when the second half goes into the trash. The same system that offers incredible choice can make nutritious food less accessible to lower-income households. Celebrating American food culture does not require denying these realities. In fact, the Europeans' criticism occasionally revealed something Americans had stopped noticing. A normal portion had grown. A normal drink had expanded. An occasional indulgence had become an everyday expectation. Visitors could admire the hospitality while questioning the health consequences. Both reactions could be true. The strongest version of the story was not, America was right. The stereotype was incomplete. American food could be excessive and creative, unhealthy and comforting, commercial and deeply regional, mass-produced and handmade, wasteful and generous. A country of global chains and family restaurants that had protected recipes for decades. Contradiction was not evidence that America lacked culinary identity. Contradiction was the identity. The turning point came when food stopped being something visitors reviewed and became something through which they formed relationships. A barbecue table brought rival supporters together. A diner conversation lasted longer than the meal. An American family invited overseas fans to a cookout. Visitors exchanged regional foods with local residents. Restaurants adapted menus for international crowds. Foreign supporters shared their own traditions while trying American ones. The World Cup created culinary exchange in both directions. Local restaurants served regional specialties to visitors, while international fans and immigrant communities brought their own foods, drinks, and rituals into host cities. Food succeeded because it removed pressure. Two strangers may avoid politics. They may disagree about football. They may know almost nothing about one another's history. But place food between them, and the first question is simple. Have you tried this? That question opens a door. Where does it come from? How is it made? What do you eat at home? What does your family prepare during celebrations? Why is this sauce important? Why does your city insist its version is the correct one? Within minutes, food becomes geography, childhood, migration, family, work, celebration, and memory. A plate tells a national story without requiring a speech. That is why culinary diplomacy can feel more honest than an advertising campaign. An advertisement announces what a country wants people to believe. A meal allows them to decide. The European fans decided that some American habits were absurd. They also decided that some were worth keeping. The giant portion was not always the most important part. The emotional message behind it was, there is enough. Take more. Stay longer. Do not worry about finishing. Bring the rest with you. That message felt particularly powerful during a tournament defined by travel. Fans were far from home. Their schedules were uncertain. They were navigating unfamiliar cities. Many were managing high costs and long distances. An abundant plate, a helpful server, or a late-night restaurant could provide more than calories. It could provide relief. For 1 hour, the visitor did not need to solve anything. The food arrived. The glass stayed full. Someone asked whether everything tasted good. The world became manageable again. This is where the mockery finally lost its power. The fans had treated American abundance as proof of cultural shallowness. But abundance could also be a language of welcome. Not always. Not perfectly. And sometimes carried far beyond what was healthy or necessary. Yet when a host placed more food on the table than the visitor could finish, the message was rarely, look how irresponsible we are. The message was, you matter enough that we prepared too much. Europe understood this language too. Italian grandmothers understood it. Greek families understood it. Turkish hosts understood it. Spanish family tables understood it. British Sunday dinners understood it. German festivals understood it. The style was not exclusively American. The scale was. And once the visitors recognized the shared emotional principle beneath the different presentation, the food stopped looking foreign. It began looking familiar in an oversized costume. The European fan laughing at a mountain of barbecue was not witnessing the absence of culture. He was witnessing another culture, exaggerating a value his own family might also understand. Feed the guest, feed him well, and when he says he is full, ask one more time. That was the climax of the entire journey. America had not defeated Europe with a larger burger. It had revealed that cultures often hide similar human instincts beneath different habits. The European visitor valued quality, tradition, and time around the table. The American host valued generosity, flexibility, and abundance. When those values met, both sides gained something. America was reminded that bigger is not automatically better. Europe was reminded that restraint is not automatically sophistication. America could learn to protect health, reduce waste, and respect ingredients. Europe could experiment with convenience, customization, accessible refills, and the idea that hospitality sometimes means giving the customer more than the minimum. The visitors had arrived asking why America needed so much. Some left asking why home offered so little of certain things. Why did another soda need to become another transaction? Why was it sometimes difficult to find food late at night? Why did requesting a change to a meal feel like challenging the chef's authority? Why could an event charge high prices without offering real value? Why did taking leftovers home occasionally feel less normal than wasting them? These were not accusations against all of Europe. They were questions, created through comparison. Travel is valuable because it makes normal habits visible. At home, the refill policy is simply the refill policy. The portion is simply the portion. The opening hours are simply the opening hours. Then you visit another system. The invisible becomes obvious. You return with a new question. Why do we do it this way? That question is the beginning of cultural change. The World Cup visitors did not need to import every American habit. No European city was asking for a milkshake with an entire dessert balanced on top. But many fans returned with stories that sounded suspiciously like desire. They missed the free refills. They missed specific chains. They missed the sauces. They missed the friendliness of the servers. They missed being able to find food at unusual hours. They missed the excitement of ordering something and not fully understanding how large it would be. They missed the ordinary American experiences they had expected to dislike. The irony was complete. They had come to mock the portions. The portions became part of the memory. They had laughed at the chains. The chains became stops on the journey. They had questioned the sauces. The sauces reached the airport. They had criticized the excess. Then they returned home and discovered that a normal drink suddenly looked unusually small. That is how America won the food argument. Not by proving that every meal was better, by making its habits unforgettable. The strongest cultures are not those that avoid criticism. They are those that remain interesting after criticism. American food survived the jokes because it offered more than one experience. A person could hate one meal and become obsessed with the next. He could criticize the health effects and admire the hospitality. He could laugh at the scale and appreciate the value. He could reject the chain restaurant and fall in love with a regional diner. The country kept creating another chance, another city, another dish, another sauce, another table, and eventually, even the skeptical visitor found something he wanted to take home. Perhaps that is the real meaning behind the phrase, Europe was missing out. Europe was not missing good food. It was missing specific forms of American openness, the permission to customize, the reassurance that more was available, the convenience of eating late, the informality of a diner, the social energy of a barbecue, the ability to turn an ordinary supermarket trip into an adventure, the willingness to combine foods without waiting for centuries of approval. American cuisine breaks rules because much of America was built by people carrying different rules into the same place. Immigrants adapted recipes. Ingredients changed. Cultures collided. Regional food developed through improvisation. Some results were terrible. Others became iconic. The creative confidence behind that process impressed visitors more than the portion size. Americans were willing to try things. Sweet with salty. Breakfast at night. Chicken with waffles. Barbecue inside almost anything. Sauces mixed together. Foods from different traditions placed on the same menu. European cuisine often protected established forms. American cuisine frequently asked, "What happens when we do this?" That question can create disaster. It can also create something nobody knew they wanted. The World Cup visitors became temporary participants in the experiment. Some became critics. Some became fans. Most became content creators. But the best moments occurred when the camera lowered and the table became shared. Because food is not only what enters the mouth, it is who sits beside you, where you were, what happened that day, what match you had watched, what stranger recommended the restaurant, which server remembered your team, which local supporter insisted you could not leave the city without trying one particular dish. Years later, the visitor may forget the final score of an early group match. He may still remember the first bite of brisket. He may remember the diner at 1 in the morning. He may remember laughing when the plate arrived. He may remember the American beside him saying, "You'll need a box." And he may remember realizing that the American was correct. The critics believed giant food revealed America's emptiness. Instead, it revealed America's personality. Confident, generous, commercial, creative, excessive, friendly, imperfect, difficult to ignore. The portions were large because America often thinks in large gestures. The drinks kept coming because abundance was part of the service. The menus stretched across multiple pages because choice was treated as freedom. The restaurants stayed open because somebody might still need them. And the sauce came on the side because the final decision belonged to you. None of this made American food superior to European food. It made it different enough to be valuable. That was the lesson the fans carried home. You do not have to surrender your own tradition to admire someone else's. A French supporter can defend French cuisine and still miss Texas barbecue. An Italian can protect Italian pizza and admit that late-night American diner culture is entertaining. A German can prefer German bread and still want free refills. A British fan can complain about American tea while building an emotional relationship with fried chicken and ranch. Cultural confidence allows contradiction. The insecure visitor must declare one side the winner. The curious visitor collects the best of both. The Europeans arrived as judges. America turned them into collectors. They collected restaurant recommendations, sauce packets, photographs, leftover boxes, regional memories, and stories they would repeat after returning home. The final judgment became less important than the discovery. America's food was not one enormous joke. It was a map. Follow barbecue and you found regional identity. Follow diner culture and you found working America. Follow fast food and you found convenience, branding, and contradiction. Follow immigrant restaurants and you found the world living inside American cities. Follow the giant portion and you often found a host who did not want anyone leaving hungry. The visitors came for the World Cup. Food gave them a route into the country. And once they had tasted the country, rather than merely watching it through a screen, the stereotype no longer satisfied them. It was too small. America, whatever else one might say about it, was not. So the next time someone laughs at an American plate because it looks excessive, remember what happened during the World Cup. The laughter was real. The criticism was sometimes deserved. But so was the surprise. The fans mocked the size. Then tasted the craft. They mocked the sauces. Then tried to take them through airport security. They mocked the refills. Then missed them. They mocked the chains. Then planned road trips around them. They believed the food would confirm everything negative they had heard about America. Instead, it introduced them to the country's humor, generosity, convenience, regional pride, immigrant history, and willingness to try almost anything once. America did not convince them by arguing. It handed them a plate. The plate was far too large, and somehow, that was exactly the point. Which American food experience do you think surprised international fans the most? Free refills, giant breakfasts, regional barbecue, ranch dressing, or late-night diners? Share your answer in the comments. Like this video if it changed how you think about American food culture, and send it to someone who still believes American cuisine is nothing more than burgers and fries. Subscribe to Modern World Insights. Because in the next documentary, we will reveal the American convenience European visitors called excessive, until they returned home and desperately missed it. This documentary presents cultural commentary based on publicly reported World Cup visitor experiences. Individual reactions vary, and no single food tradition represents every American or European community.